Welcome to my video on the 1984 arcade game SonSon. This is featured in the, hold on, I have it right here, Capcom Arcade Stadium Complete Pack. That's right. Guess who found yet another ridiculous deal on a bunch of emulated games? You're listening to them. I'm gonna keep the review spoiler free. I doubt I'll do a thoughts video. I guess we'll see. Certainly, especially whether it'll be in this particular video. But before I spoil anything, I will definitely verbally warn you, and it will not be during the review itself. The game is rated E for everyone, so will this video be. And yeah, another game that I absolutely loved. We're gonna real quick do some video recommendations, and just be aware these are not all going to be rated E for everyone. The only part of the video that won't be. Lin Saga's You Haven't Met the Right Person Yet. Drop Out the Woes of a Quiet Person. The Vile Eye Analyzing Evil. Nikki Santoro and Tony Spilatro. Francesca Ramsey, If I Don't Know What a Word Means, I Look It Up. Some More News, Maybe Society Shouldn't Be Based on Gambling. And Awkward Choco, Wait, How Did Women Become Responsible? And yeah, right. And so I'm gonna try not to restate what I said about arcade and arcade-style games in general in my video on Space Harrier 2. So since that one's right there available for you to watch. Now, this, I should also quickly note, I only play this in one-player mode. I appreciate there is a two-player co-op mode, and I can imagine it's quite fun. What I say in this video will be based on the one-player. So, let's see. Yeah, basically, it's very straightforward. Right there in the opening cutscene, I really love when you play, a game from this period, and it does indeed have, within a few seconds, it'll, tell you this is what happened, this is what you're trying to deal with. You had several companions. They are kidnapped, and you're fighting your way to trying to free them. And that is basically it. It is a side-scrolling shoot 'em up, which it's one of the ones where the screen, not constantly, but at times, it will move whether or not you want it to, and thus you have to move with it. And basically, you are constantly repositioning yourself on the screen. There is not one spot on the screen that you can remain in and only aim. You will have to move. And of course, because enemies, the screen is moving left to right, enemies will predominantly come from, they will move right to left, or start at the right at least and move towards you. So you have, let's see, and some of them will come from above, some of them come from below. So the, close to the leftmost edge, but not 100% there necessarily, is where you'll want to be, in roughly in the middle. But even there, you simply cannot permanently stay. And this is sometimes at its best when there are indeed enemies coming from... Yeah, did I mention? Sometimes they do come from the left. It's just predominantly from the right to the left, And yeah, there are times where they will basically be coming from all directions. Did I mention that one-hit kills? And, you only have so many lives. This was definitely made to eat your quarters, and I can absolutely imagine that it did. I've only played this emulated version. This is a good time to note that this version does have rewind and save states, which definitely comes in extremely handy. and you only have one type of projectile. You can only shoot left and right, and never at the same time. And number of the enemies will also, be taken out by one single hit from your projectiles. And let's see. I don't think there's too much more of the... Yeah, I did appreciate that there are times where the game does not move from left to right, where it is just standing still. And, as soon as I saw it the first time, I've played enough video games to know, oh, I'm supposed to pay close attention to. Maybe there's something important that, maybe I won't be able to attack everything here. Maybe I will, but I have to be fast, and yeah, those can really increase the tension. And that brings us to, yeah, like many other games from this time, it's not particularly long. Like, obviously, it'll feel it if you're struggling, and the rewind and save states help tremendously with that. And it's a fairly generous rewind, too. And let's see, yeah, it's also, there's, you press to fire, and there's one that... See, I think I ended up never even using the other one, but there's one for rapid fire and one for like regular fire. I'm pretty sure it's like the same projectile, but yeah, used rapid fire for, I guess, pretty obvious reasons. Other than that, it's WASD, and that is for turning and moving left and right, and jumping up and down. Yeah, I guess this is a decent time to talk about. So over the course of this, there are these, I forgot to count. I don't know, let's maybe say 7, about thereabouts. Baker's half dozen, I guess, different platforms, and you will have to use all of them. I will admit, at the very start, I was thinking I'm not touching the edges because I know how exposed those are. Because if you're really, really close to the top, bottom, left or right edges of the screen, you won't even have time to move if something suddenly pops up. There are times where you do end up using those, and you do, of course, you're sitting there thinking, I know something's going to happen. I better very, very quickly maneuver away from this as soon as I get the chance, And one of the big things is that a lot of your enemies, they can't shoot. Some of them can, but there are so many of them that you have to stay ahead of them in order to avoid, some of them will surround you, like several of the same type of enemy will surround you if you are not moving enough. And I think that does bring us nicely to the enemy design. So you take up about 1 square of this game. So do nearly all the enemies. Beyond that, there is just about no limitation to them. Like, I mean, I guess they don't tend to blend in with the background. Other than that, like, the shapes and size within that square, the exact, like, some of them are humanoids, some of them are creatures, some of them I look at and I have no idea what that even is. They use all the different colors that were available with the technology, and just like, yeah, I don't know. I've decided I'm not gonna like spend a lot of time describing. This is a game that's very easy to find video footage of, what it looks like, so you can, yeah, just like, it's not even, you won't even have played for very many minutes before you've seen a bunch of different enemy types. Now, what I will briefly talk about is the AI. So the behavior for these enemies is also very distinct for the different ones, So let's just start with something as simple as some of them are, there'll be one of them at a time. A lot will be multiple. Some of them will be like in flocks, and some of those flocks will literally, like, you see them move, and they'll try to go under, over, left, and right of you. And the thing is, as soon as at least one of them is to your left or right, you can shoot that one. But if there's also ones, if there's multiple there, you'll have to shoot several times to take them out. And if there's already ones over and or under and or to the right, you might not be able to shoot all of them. So what you have to do is try to make sure to stay ahead. And keep in mind, any movement they can do, you can do as well. There's just more of them than you. So yeah, you'll want to make sure to always stay ahead. And, before you say, oh, that doesn't sound so bad, oh, there's maybe more than one group of enemies at the same time, so just keep that in mind. And some of them will move all in unison. Some of them will move in formation. I've already mentioned the ones that are trying to specifically surround you and such. Among them, I guess I'll just briefly note, among the ones that move in formation are, I want to say, are those pigeons, maybe something like that. And some of them, I believe, are piranhas, and yeah, the piranhas jumping out of the water that's underneath you. Some of the flying ones start from up above you, and yeah, I did quite appreciate those, like, if you don't need the extra points, you might be able to just dodge the, these animal ones entirely, because they're not really looking for you. They're just in the spot that they are, and it's not only going to be very many seconds before the screen has moved past them, but they are a decent way to rack up extra points, and the high score is obviously part of the point. And this is very much one of those games where peer pressure is a thing, because if you're playing this in an arcade and the people watching you play are seeing you constantly just avoid dealing with those rather than using them to rack up points, there's going to be a reaction from the onlookers, like if you've watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, no, that's real. Well, in a manner of speaking, but the bit of that movie that if you've watched it, you already know what bit I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'm not going to spoil it. Yeah, that's, yeah. Anyway, let's see, other than that, there are, there are some where they basically move at the same time, but some of the flying ones, there are these that look kind of like gnats or something. Gnat with a G. I'm not talking about like a bunch of people called Natalie and using a nickname. They will somewhat surround you, and they'll move towards you, but they might go right over, right under, right ahead, it's, at least some of them, and some of them will head straight for you, so they are very much ones to watch out for. And the thing is, they'll give you like a few, well, maybe not even several seconds, I guess it's possible, it's maybe just 1 second, you'll see a flock of them, and you have to, ideally, you'll take out as many as you can before any of them particularly start moving, because as soon as they start moving, it's much more difficult. When they're all in one spot and not moving, much easier, but you might not be able to get into a position to take them out because of all the other enemies on the screen. And I think, yeah, and that just leaves, so I've talked about the enemies that move. There is at least one type of enemy that does not move in this game. At first I wasn't even sure if they were destructible, and I guess ultimately I don't know for sure if all of them are, because they certainly took more shots than the other ones, which is also a trade-off since they don't move. I will say this is one of those games where I don't think there was even once where I touched something thinking that it would be good for me, or shot at something thinking it wouldn't, and was mistaken, and that is a big deal for games like this. There are a number of games that struggle with that, and especially, this has somewhat limited colors compared to today. There are things that look, that, like, if you just go off the color, you might think, oh, that's friendly, but yeah, and one of the ways you rack up the high score is to pick up the various positive, the bonus point things, some of which will appear if you take out a bunch of enemies within a very short amount of time and such. Now, I think that is just about right. And I also really like that at least once there was this area with static enemies, and I guess that was before I realized that I could shoot them if I just kept firing. But yeah, it was technically possible to bypass them without shooting them, but it was an uphill battle. It's very difficult. There was just a tiny little area that I could squeeze through with my jumping, and been playing platformers for 3 decades now. Still love that. Those really tight squeeze jumps. And yeah, like, it almost feels silly to say for a game that is literally just walking, jumping, and shooting, but the atmosphere does genuinely work. Like, I really did feel like this was a full world that, yeah, pretty hostile one, but I mean, it opens with kidnappings, so plural. Now, I think that does pretty much, yeah, the graphics look good for what it was. I was never confused about what I was looking at. And the audio is also great. Like, the different, there's enough, like, power to the various sound effects that it always feels, really satisfying taking out these enemies, and the music really nails this. Like, there's tension and energy, but it's also not like overpowering or something. And the game is both challenging and fun. And let's see, I suppose that does pretty much cover. So yeah, replayability is really just down to high score, and obviously, if you choose not to use save states and or rewind, then it is, of course, what's the word? It is one of those games where you have to play it a bunch of times in order to get good enough at it to complete it. Did not run into any bugs or glitches. And yeah, I was impressed by how well they did on the level design, because, like, it sounds probably very limiting, right? And certainly a lot of the time it is just that each of the platforms is, complete. There are no gaps, and that definitely does affect how you play, because when there is a gap, like, some enemies can't jump gaps. So if you get past a gap and enemies want to get to you, they are more likely to come, if you're standing right next to the gap, they're more likely to come from under or over you. And yeah, let's see. And if you, you can fall through gaps as well. And this is something that they could have gone just completely over the top with, and I appreciate their restraint in not doing so. I did just want to briefly note, so there are mini bosses, and those take up, like, more squares, more than the one square. And I mean, I don't even want to give away the exact visual design, but it was very memorable. And the let's see, they also take multiple hits to yeah, and it was very satisfying the first time I was able to, they don't necessarily attack just one at a time. It was very satisfying the first time I figured out exactly how to manage to take out multiple. And other than that, there is, right, I wanted to note, so one of the ways that the game sometimes gets you to move out of the safe position of, fairly close to the leftmost edge, certainly closer to that than the rightmost, and around the middle, vertically speaking, sometimes there'll be a bonus thing close to one of the edges, and yeah, the first time that I just fell for it hook, line, and sinker, because it was the right edge, which is like, just give it a little bit of time, the right edge will become the middle, but yeah, as soon as I got taken out by an enemy, I was like, fair enough, you got me. I know now, I understand it, because the first time I believe was very early in this game, so yeah. And I did also want to briefly note, so sometimes the screen will stop moving for several seconds, and there are, on the various platforms, these like shields covering these sorcerers, and the sorcerers are very quick to fire, and they can only shoot left or right, but if you jump up very close to them, to their left or right, they will immediately smoke you. And yeah, it's very satisfying when you get to a point where you can take out all of the shields and sorcerers before the screen moves, or at least before the screen has moved on, which once again, there might be a bunch of other enemies, complicating that matter. But yeah, just really, really fun. Genuinely, this is one of those games I would describe as addictive. So this one is getting 8 quests to rescue your friends by, just taking out everything you come across with, yeah, high energy, high risk, high reward gameplay out of 10.